Thank you. Thank you, Tanish. Thank you, all of you, for taking the time to be here. Thank you. It's good to see some familiar faces. And we were just here a couple of weeks ago. And by the way, brother, you touched my heart, man. You said something. Young man who spent the last few years desperate to get to San Quentin, somewhere else in the prison system, lost, and was reading about San Quentin news and was so inspired by the work they were doing. And he finally got here and did everything he could to leverage his way in, just bothering folks up there saying, come on, you got to let me in, let me in, let me in. And you said something that, boy, it just, hit home. You said that when you saw that first byline and your name was on it, and you sent it right home to your mom, and you said it was one of the first times she was proud of me. That says something, just this notion of feeling pride, feeling loved, and you did that on your own. And that's a hell of a story. I mean, you think about childhood, you want to go to maybe why we're all here. Either, launches you or breaks you. And so much of our life is sort of working through that and that dynamic. I walked right after talking to you guys and was walking along the fence, and a guy runs up to me and says, hey, Red Table Pizza. I was like, yeah, I remember Red Table Pizza. I grew up in Marin. He goes, no, Joe Wagner Field. I said, wait a second. That was my baseball team in Little League. I was like, who the hell are you? And he goes, man, you don't remember me? We played Little League together. We walked the fence, and the fence, you guys know better than me, I thought that fence was permanent. It ended right there. Just spoke to me at a different level. Still processing that. Two different directions in our lives, just down here in Corte Madera in Marin County, where we played Little League together. Hell of a thing. So we're here soberly and mindful that we are many journeys, many parts, but one body. Bible teaches us that. We were just in the chapel a moment ago. And when one part suffers, we all suffer. Dr. King talked about that. We're all bound together by a web of mutuality. And so in that spirit of reconciliation, recognition, we're here to do more and be better. Not just asking you to do more, those that are incarcerated, and be better, but all of us to do more and be better, to reconcile and to address these stubborn realities. We are as dumb as we want to be. 2/3 of folks, the senator says, coming out of the prison every single year, or at least within 3 years, violate some probation order or commit another damn crime. I mean, 2/3, and we perpetuate that system, and we call that system somehow public safety oriented. Where's the public safety in that? It's exactly as Miyabanta said. This is about asking ourselves the fundamental question, what are the community's needs? How do we serve the community? Knowing that 30,000 people every single year come out of our system. 30,000 through CDCR every single year. 804 of you came out of this system last year just in San Quentin. 50 to 80 people every single month cycling back out into the community. That's reality. And how are people coming back? Are they ready to reintegrate in society? They're ready to be fully participatory in the life of their city and their county, our state and our nation? Or are they bitter? And so for us, this is about real public safety. This is about keeping communities safe. This is about getting serious about addressing the issue of crime and violence in our state, but doing things differently and acknowledging, as was said by many speakers, with humility, that we have failed for too long. And so the question we've been asking ourselves, and you heard the why from many people why we're here. I just added a few thoughts to that. The question now is what and how? We've been mindful over the course of the last number of years, I've had the privilege of being governor for the last 4 years, that we need to do more and better as it relates to rehabilitation. We initiated some programs at Valley State, Salinas Valley. We did some work at Central Valley Women's Facility, where we're doing some really impressive things. We're patting ourselves on the back. I'm grateful for the great leadership and work, but it just didn't feel big enough. We weren't scaling to the degree that I felt we should and could. I've had so many conversations. We were just joking. Phil Ting is not just Assembly Member Ting, he's the budget chair. He's the guy you should be hanging out with. And for 4 years, we've been talking. We've been talking about this reality that we peaked at about 174,000 prisoners in 2006. By the way, in 1976, it was 21,000. When I got out of Redwood High School, it was 50,000. That wasn't the black and white movie days. I'm not that old. 50,000. 174,000 prisoners. Now we're down, plus or minus, depending on the day of the week, a little below 100,000. That's given us an opportunity to think anew and act anew and begin to do things a little bit differently as we decompress a little bit, as we address all those violations we were in terms of federal law and federal receivers and lawsuits and all that stress and travail and going back at each other and all this and just trying to get through the day and muddling through. Now we have a chance to pause, take a deep breath, and reflect. And that's what Valley State, that's what Salinas Valley was about. But again, it didn't feel right. We moved to close DVI, never an easy decision. We announced the closure of Chuckawalla 2025. We're moving away, thank you to the remarkable legislative leaders here, away from private prisons. I mean, the perversity of that, I don't want to get into, though I'm happy to. And we're making progress, but we're not doing justice to the R in CDCR. And so we're here seeing the opportunity present itself at scale. 3,800 folks in this institution alone. I think we've got 546 folks still on condemned row. 101 were transferred in the last year or so. 21 are in Central Valley Women's Facility. How about the opportunity to transform condemned row? But the opportunity, what if we converted death row to an honor yard? What if we took this facility, 81,000 feet, I mean, look at this, and reimagined this and scaled the work, ear hustle, scaled the work that Chris Redlitz and his team are doing at Last Mile, scale the work of all of these remarkable philanthropists, thank you, and volunteers, 500 strong on an annual basis, a core group that come here, the 80 programs that are well established here. We scale them at a whole new level. We asked ourselves the what if question, and it presented anew this opportunity to do something at scale and to do dignity to a lot of the hard work that has been done, not just here, but in other parts of our correctional system. None of this, though, is possible without the staff themselves. I cannot be more grateful that Glenn Staley is here, CCPOA. I'd be more grateful for his willingness to work with us over a very difficult few years and to have an open hand, not a closed fist. Don't get me wrong. We don't agree on everything, and he makes sure that I hear on behalf of his members. But one thing we agree on, we care about the health and wellness of his staff. Isn't it amazing? Roughly 10% of our correctional staff thinks about seriously or has attempted to commit suicide. This system isn't working for anybody. We have got to reconcile that. And the fact that Glenn and his team have gone to Norway, the fact that they've kept an open mind about different strategies is remarkable. And we're honored by that and grateful, because we know there's an old African proverb, you want to go fast, go alone, but you want to go far, you got to go together. And this is the moment to go together so that we can go far and do something transformative. So we are announcing today that process. We've got a co-chair and this remarkable warden who immediately said yes, not even a hesitation. Goes, I get it, I'm all in. So we said, well, now you're co-chair. Bree Williams, who's interestingly with CDCR staff on the way right now back to Norway of Ament, who is working with us in those other prisons, Valley State and others, on some of the restorative justice efforts that they've initiated. She will be our other co-chair. We're creating an advisory committee of victims and survivors, critical component of this effort. Deep reverence and respect to victims and survivors, to CBOs, to those well-established reentry programs, and to many other experts and leaders across a spectrum and across the United States on an advisory committee. We've requested of the legislature $20 million to begin the design work to move this process along quickly, and we've created a date with destiny at the end of 2025. We have changed the name of this facility, and we will formalize that as we process the next year and a half or two, where it's San Quentin Rehabilitation. Formally, San Quentin, respecting 1852, respecting what this institution means to a lot of people, keeping the name, but codifying our intent. We have to be in the homecoming business. It's not just about rehabilitation, it's about homecoming. 800 plus people, again, every year, coming out of this institution. You want folks coming back, feeling better, not in the nomenclature of Jesse Jackson, feeling bitter. And so that's the spirit that defines this moment, and that's the spirit that brings us all here together. Let me just close by saying this. I'm not naive about how difficult this is going to be, and don't suggest for a second we think this is just a walk in the park. Nothing that happens within these institutions is easy, nothing. I mean, my gosh, I imagine just changing, we were talking about the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches here a few years ago. Just changing the jelly here probably took, 10 years. I don't even want to ask. We're just trying to figure out the phone racket around here. That took 4 years for us to help. So look, we're not naive about that, but we are here with a sense of urgency and intentionality, and we're here in partnership with these remarkable legislative leaders. And I couldn't be more proud of them for being willing to put themselves out. I couldn't be more proud of the legislature and the work they've done on public safety in the last few years across the spectrum. And I couldn't be more proud of all of you giving us this opportunity to do something at scale that we hope will be a model for the nation, a model for the world. That's our goal. That's our intention. It's not more complicated than that. We want to be the preeminent restorative justice facility in the world. That's the goal. San Quentin is iconic. San Quentin is known worldwide. If San Quentin can do it, it can be done anywhere else. We say it all the time. Once a mind is stretched, it never goes back to its original form. This is about stretching people's minds about what we're capable of doing and reducing recidivism in this state and reducing the likelihood of someone coming back and not being a full member of society and keeping people safe and making sure that victims feel respected throughout that process. So that's the goal. That's the announcement we're making today. We have a timeline internally, and I'll close on this. That's why I brought all these fancy folks here. You don't even know who these folks are, but you're about to. This is all our agency folks. This is not a CDCR only process. This is the rest of government, departments. This is all of us rowing together. And I think that's what makes this very, very different. We were just in the chapel, in the spirit of, Pastor Brown. We weren't just praying, we were moving our feet, talking about the work that we'll be doing next to begin to integrate more fully the opportunities to support this transformation over the course of the next few years. And so I'm grateful to all of you for being willing to do that, including the fanciest guy here in the red tie, and that's the finance director for the state of California. Remember, it's the 4th largest economy in the world. So Ting has some competition, is my only point, with Joe, who's here as well, and he'll be key to unlocking a lot of this. Forgive me for being so long-winded. Again, I'm just so grateful to everybody, the spirit that brings us here together. I hope that spirit defines, I hope some little bit of optimism that you may have about this moment. Humility, recognition of how difficult this is going to be and how we'll have some success and failure and setbacks. But I think a lot of eyes are looking at us, and we've got to deliver. And what we're, I think, promoting is transformational, and what we're promoting is fundamentally about public safety. With that, we're happy now to answer any questions.
Hey, Governor. Hi, Governor. Thank you for taking our questions. I'm Dustin Gardner from the San Francisco Chronicle. You mentioned the Scandinavian comparison and wanting to follow that model. A lot of those countries have very liberal policies in the sense of release time. They have programs that allow some incarcerated people to go home to their families on the weekend, for example. Are you willing to go that far? Why or why not?
Well, we have a lot of creative programs that offer a lot of rehabilitative opportunities in this state already. We're not ideological about our approach, and we'll be looking creatively. I'm bringing on a world-class group of advisors here, looking at best practices, looking at what works around the rest of the world, what works around the rest of the country. There's some other states that have some novel strategies and approaches, and we're bringing those and those informed strategies to bear. I will say, what we're about fundamentally, this is not just about, reforming, it's about reimagining in this respect. It's about innovation. I don't think we talk enough about innovation in criminal justice. Data-driven innovation. If there's something that separates our game in California from the game played everywhere else, it is innovation. And so I'm for, in answering your question, for what works. And I'm for what is possible within the prism that I operate in, which is not an ideological one, it's a very pragmatic one. And I'm looking forward to pursuing what works at scale.
How you doing, Governor Newsom? My name is Steve Brooks. I'm a San Quentin News reporter and the current editor-in-chief of San Quentin News. We are the most trusted prison newspaper in the country. And we thank you for being here today.
I never heard trusted and news in the same sentence. Well done, man.
But I have a two-part question. San Quentin is already considered the epicenter of rehabilitation in California. Most of what we're concerned about here is about the overcrowding. We're concerned about the living conditions. Yeah. We're concerned about what the Scandinavian model is going to look like as far as dealing with those types of issues. And we're also concerned about violent offenders in California have been the offenders who have been doing the work, who have been going back to society as changed people and as change makers like Phil Melendez. So what we want to know is this Scandinavian model going to all of a sudden say no violent offenders? We want you to tell us a little bit about that.
Just that, no, quite the contrary. And I don't refer to it as a Scandinavian model. This is the California model, the California way, informed by best practice across the globe. The cultural work that's been done in Scandinavia and elsewhere is important, and we're looking to see what we can import from their work, particularly as it relates to the relationships that are formed within the prison walls. But I am probably as familiar, well, probably more familiar than most about the point you made around violent offenders. As someone that reviews, you know it well, suitability, on a weekly basis and reviews every single file individually. I do not outsource it to my staff, and is very mindful of recidivation, broadly defined, and those that have been incarcerated under those circumstances and the delta and distinctions between the two. No, I'm not looking to cherry pick, so to speak, certain offenses. I'm for people that are committed, not passively interested in changing themselves and in turn helping us keep our communities safe and changing our communities as a consequence. That's all we're after.
Hi, Governor Newsom. My name's Aditi Bandlamudi. I'm with KQED News. Two questions for you. I'm curious if the advisory group is going to include people who are currently incarcerated in San Quentin. I'm also curious if some of the existing programs that do exist within the prison today will be part of the rehabilitation model.
Yeah. Absolutely. Success leaves clues. We're building off the success of so many wonderful, extraordinary programs here. I noted roughly 80 programs that I'm familiar with. There may be more that I'm not familiar with. Some have been more successful than others. Some are scalable, some are not. And we're mindful of that. The biggest problem here is not imagination or ambition. The biggest problem has been space, and that's why this 81,000 feet is so opportunistic in terms of reprogramming, quite literally redesigning this space, creating more classrooms, creating more opportunity to create more partnerships and support. We're about public-public partnerships, not just public-private. That's why I have state agencies here, and I'll look for local agencies and federal agencies. I want to build more cross-departmental engagement here, respecting the work that the Secretary does as it relates to the rules and regulations within the system itself that are well established and the MOUs that we have established with our workforce. As it relates to, again, building a relationship in terms of design of this reform, we can't do it without having a deep understanding of people that have lived the experience, both on the outside and those still on the inside. So absolutely, to the first part of your question, we will incorporate very formally those views in our efforts and in our reforms.
Hi, Governor Newsom. My name is Samia Kamal. I'm with Cal Matters. Could you talk about the thought process behind putting the funding into one facility and when other facilities might see similar programming in the future?
Yeah, it's and, not or. We have an abundant mindset, not a scarcity mindset. I mentioned Salinas Valley. I mentioned what we're doing in Central Valley, the women's facility. I proudly mention Valley State, having visited, ironically and interesting, with folks from Norway, where we were there. And I want to keep those programs going. And I want to continue to model better best practices in real time and not limit them. But we have a chance to do it in a broader ecosystem here and scale here that can really light up the imagination of what's possible and accelerate those efforts across the system. Again, we want to reduce costs. We want to ultimately reduce incarceration by keeping our communities safe. And we want to make sure that people, when they come out as fully engaged, committed members of our community and society and are contributing and not likely to re-enter into the system at the burden and cost of not only lack of public safety, but public trust as well.
Governor Hannah Wiley with the Los Angeles Times. We're at San Quentin, so a question on the death penalty. You're a staunch opponent of capital punishment and obviously issued a moratorium in 2019, but voters have not had the chance to weigh in on the topic in several years. You have not worked on putting the question back to voters in your governorship. Do you plan to work with the legislature on getting the question before voters again, or using your own ballot measure committee to put the initiative to voters before the end of your term?
Yeah, I'm as you know, I've stood very firmly in opposition. I think it was almost 4 years ago this week, perhaps. We announced that moratorium. Wasn't universally well received. I met with victims' families. I can assure you, could attest to that. There was a lot of mixed opinions. So I'm deeply mindful of that. I'm also mindful of Prop 66. By the way, Prop 66 gives us the tools and capacity to convert the condemned yard into an honor yard. Interesting fact. I am committed to seeing the abolition of state-sanctioned murder. Beyond me, that many elected officials promote murder in an effort to deter it by somehow saying it's wrong to kill someone by committing that act in a very formalized manner themselves. I find it perverse beyond words. We value life in that respect. And so I hope to continue to process efforts, and we're seeing other states take similar actions that we took. And I don't close the door at any prospects along the lines of your questioning. Governing a state larger than 21 states combined through some very challenging years, means you zig and zag in terms of what you can get done and when you can get it done. I'm looking forward to, recall aside, filling out my term and doing a lot of bold, and I hope what are perceived as courageous things. We'll stay tuned across the spectrum, but on criminal justice, this is one of the things that I'm most enthusiastic about, what we're announcing here today.
So have you met with lawmakers, or have you explored putting your name on
I meet
a
with
ballot
lawmakers
measure
every
to put the
single day. I've met with author of that of those bills, and at the right time, the right place, where we can get the right conditions, I'm very open to continuing to pursue the effort to end the death penalty, not just in this state, but I want to see it ended around the globe, not just in this country.
Hey, Governor, Jeremy White with Politico. So we've heard a lot from inmates here today, as well as folks up here, about the remarkable array of programming that already exists here, how San Quentin is a model in that respect. So I think what a lot of us are trying to understand is, we've heard a lot of talk about transformation today. What specifically are we talking about? Is it more funding for the things that exist at San Quentin? Is it expanding it to other, given that this is already happening?
I think it'd be good to look around. We're quite literally going to transform this space. There's 81,000 square feet that's going to be completely reimagined, which will allow us to 10x the scale of programs that exist and bring in programs that don't exist. New partnerships, new opportunities across the spectrum, be it traditional vocational programs, building on the work that's being done, novel strategies as it relates to what Chris and his team have done at Last Mile, the work that continues to need to be done on just more traditional educational opportunities. I want to significantly expand those. We still have a lot of substance abuse issues, which is galling beyond words within the bars, not just outside, and work in that space. All of those things are part and parcel. We look forward to using the resources, as long as the legislature formally approves them, to move forward with those designs and to continue the process through the advisory committee to explore other programmatic opportunities that will be incorporated in this larger design. And that's the purpose of the co-chairs and the purpose of the advisory committee that's being formalized today.
So we've heard about the $20 million for this facility. What are we potentially looking at to make this a systemic, this type of programming more widely available?
That's what the $20 million intends to seek. Oh, we have estimates. Everybody can have an estimate. It could be $1, it could be $1 billion, it could be 500 million. You fill in. I mean, I know everybody wants to rush to that. We have our own back of the envelope. I don't even want to offer it because it's not even as, I don't even say it's the back of a napkin. It's not even an envelope. So that's what the $20 million seeks to understand.
Hi, Governor. Nicole Nixon with Cap Radio News. You've talked about transforming death row. Wondering if you have more specifics about a timeline for transferring those inmates, where they would go. Every
individual, sentences are not being changed. I want to make that crystal clear. Every individual has a customized assessment and plan. That has been the case for the 101 individuals that have moved off condemned row in the last year and a half. We've gone through a public process to get public feedback. We just exhausted that, I think, a week or so ago. We will take that feedback and we will incorporate it into the next iteration for the 546 remaining condemned inmates here at Quentin. They will be brought general population throughout the system, and again assessed on a risk basis, individual by individual, over the course of the next 18 to 20 months. The goal that we've established internally, give us a little flexibility in this space, is by the end of 2024.
You said they would be put in the general prison population?
That's what we have already done with over 100 prisoners so far.
One more follow-up question. You've talked about turning this area into an honor yard. What is an honor yard?
Well, these guys can tell you better than I can. I think someone who's been on the damn honor yard should come on up and explain it, because you don't need a politician telling you what an honor yard is.
Yeah, sure. Just real briefly, what it means is basically you've probably been without any rules violations for a certain amount of time, and there's a certain amount of programming that is offered and special opportunities, sometimes even extra little privileges, maybe a little more canteen extra packages. But for the most part, I will say like an honor yard is one of those places where everyone has the mindset of wanting to do better, be better, program, get some healing, and hopefully get home.
Hi, Governor. Brooks Jerose, KTVU. I'm curious, how will you measure success, and how quickly do you hope to see it?
Oh, that's the right question. And look, at the end of the day, it's all about public safety. That's why these systems were designed in 1852, this institution, at the end of the day. And so we want to see these recidivism rates flip on their head. I mean, that's what you've seen in other successful models. They've taken 70% recidivism rates and they've turned them on my head. Norway's down to 20% or so. Again, I know people have their own points of view about Norway. I think they have as many prison cells as we have prisoners here at San Quentin alone in their entire country. So one has to be mindful of that. That said, public safety is the determinative factor of assessing success or failure. And that is determined on the basis of people's willingness and commitment to change themselves, to change their attitudes, and become positive contributory citizens when they're back in community. We need to help support people along that path, mindful that they're coming out regardless. And we will determine on the basis of our reentry efforts and the progress in terms of our longitudinal data that will be collected as part of this innovative model, the effectiveness of this program, make a determination whether or not to continue to scale it to other institutions.
Thank you.
Hello, Governor. Jim Carlton with the Wall Street Journal. On the issue of cost, we're standing on some of the most valuable land in California right here, Marin County. Did you consider maybe converting this to private land at some point and doing this facility in a cheaper location? Or why here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the right question, and I'm going to be as candid as I possibly can. Yes, we consider that, but not for very long. And here's the why. Proximity to support community. The opportunity for this institution to be a model that impacts all the other institutions is unique and distinctive at this location in particular. Well-established relationships with CBOs, reentry programs, and volunteer networks. Proximity to one of the most dynamic regions and creative regions in the world, the San Francisco Bay Area. For those reasons, had we shut it down, we felt we would fall backwards in terms of being able to build something else back up. There are 1,000+ prisoners already at this facility actively engaged in their own rehabilitation. What a baseline to start to build off of. To have disrupted that, I think would have created more problems and set actually the cause back. So for us, the dollars and cents of this are about a longer-term strategy to significantly reduce taxpayers' burden and costs in terms of proving a model and program of rehabilitation that can be an international model.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hi, Governor. Daniela Pardo with Spectrum News, and I'm the last question. You mentioned multiple times
You kicked everyone out, did you? Yeah.
You mentioned multiple times you're not naive to how difficult this will be. So what do you think will be the #1 challenge to get this all done?
Fires, droughts, social unrest, pandemics. Ron DeSantis, did I say Ron DeSantis? Let me start it. There's no substitute for leadership. And I say it all the time, difference between success and failure in life in every way, shape, or form is the difference between the distinction of being interested in something or being committed. Interested people find excuses. Committed people find ways of getting things done. It's their level of commitment. Are they just here because I made them come? They're here just doing their time, their version of time. How committed are we? This was I mean this, I thought about this 4 years ago, and all those things got in the way. We literally were thinking about this a few years back when Phil Ting and I were having those conversations about what he was hoping to pursue with his colleagues and Senator McGuire. I mean, these are next level leaders here in terms of their vision. We started having these creative conversations, and life got in the way. And here we are. And so I realized, and this is just my first few weeks, I mean, it's month 2 or 3 of my second term, we got to go now. When I wait till the last year or so, not going to happen. We need to institutionalize this so whoever comes behind us wants to keep this thing going. And so we have a lot of work to do. That's why I put this very uncomfortable 2025. None of these folks are happy with me saying 2025. In fact, my staff, even this morning, was debating with me, do not say 2025. 2025. Either have a date with destiny, when goals are nothing more than dreams with deadlines, we got to have a deadline to really initiate and move and move. And so that's going to create some energy. Some, you know, Glenn's looking at me like, hold on, buddy. But we have the spirit of cooperation. And again, none of us have a fixed mindset. And so that's the thinking.
Thanks, Governor.
I appreciate the question. Look, I'm sorry, these poor folks have been standing for an hour behind me, but none of this is possible without them. And so thank you for your vision, your wisdom. Thank you for your faith and devotion to these folks who are on the inside. Thank you to our department heads, and thank you all very much for taking the time to be here. Thank you, guys.